I'm 87 years old, and 3 weeks ago my son took my car keys. Not asked for them. Not suggested maybe it was time to think about not driving. Took them. Right out of my hand while I was standing in my own driveway, about to go to the grocery store like I've done every Tuesday morning for the last 40 years. He said I was being reckless. He said I was a danger to myself and others. He said, and these were his exact words, "Dad, you need to act your age. Act my age." I'm sitting in my living room right now, looking out at my car in the driveway. 2018 Honda Accord, 42,000 miles. Perfect condition. I can see it, but I can't drive it because my 59-year-old son has decided I'm too old to be trusted with my own vehicle. And this isn't just about the car. This is about what happens when your children stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a problem they need to manage. Let me tell you how we got here. Because the context matters. Because this didn't start 3 weeks ago in my driveway. This started years ago, so gradually I didn't see it happening until it was too late. I grew up in Kansas, small town, the kind where everybody knew everybody and nobody locked their doors. My father ran a hardware store. My mother taught 3rd grade. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor. We were solid, dependable. The kind of people who showed up when they said they would and paid their bills on time. I got my driver's license the day I turned 16, 1953. Took the test in my father's '49 Chevrolet, parallel parked it perfectly on the first try, and the examiner, a man named Ed Carmichael who'd gone to high school with my father, shook my hand and said, "Congratulations, son, you're a driver now." I've been driving ever since. 71 years. No major accidents. One fender bender in 1967 that wasn't my fault. A clean record that most people half my age would envy. I met Dorothy when I was 23. She was 19, working at the public library, had red hair that caught the light and a laugh that made you want to say funny things just to hear it again. We got married in 1960, bought a house in 1962, had our son David in 1965. I worked as an engineer for Boeing for 38 years, drove to work every day, 40-minute commute each way, never missed a day for anything short of actual hospitalization. Dorothy worked part-time at the library until David was in high school, then full-time after that. We were a 2-car family. Independence was important to both of us. The ability to go where we needed to go when we needed to go there. David grew up watching us value that independence. Watched me teach him to drive when he was 15, the same way my father had taught me. Watched me maintain my cars, change my own oil, rotate my own tires. Watched me drive Dorothy to her chemotherapy appointments twice a week for 6 months in 2009, never complaining, never asking anyone else to do it because that was my job, my responsibility, my privilege. Dorothy died in 2010, 14 years ago, and I've been on my own since then. Not lonely necessarily. I have routines, I have friends, I have a life that works. And a huge part of that life, a huge part of what keeps me independent and functional and feeling like a human being instead of a relic, is my ability to drive. I drive to the grocery store every Tuesday. I drive to my doctor's appointments. I drive to the hardware store when I need something for the house. I drive to my friend Walter's house on Thursday afternoons for gin rummy. I drive to church on Sundays when I feel like going, which admittedly isn't every week anymore, but that's between me and God. I'm a good driver. I'm a careful driver. I signal my turns. I check my mirrors. I maintain a safe following distance. I don't speed. I don't drive distracted. I don't drive at night anymore because my night vision isn't what it used to be, so I don't. I'm aware of my limitations, and I adjust accordingly. But 3 months ago, something happened that apparently convinced my son I'd become a menace to society. I was backing out of a parking space at the grocery store, standard maneuver, done it 10,000 times. There was a cart corral to my right. I was checking my mirrors, being careful, taking my time. And as I was backing up, a woman pushing a shopping cart came around the corner of the corral, walking behind my car. I saw her in my backup camera. I stopped immediately, didn't hit her, didn't even come close to hitting her. She kept walking. I backed out the rest of the way. End of incident. Except she reported it to the store, told them an elderly driver nearly backed into her. Store called David because I have him listed as my emergency contact. David called me that evening, wanted to know what happened. I told him exactly what I just told you. He asked if I was sure I'd seen her in time. I said yes, absolutely. He asked if maybe I'd been going too fast. I said no, I was barely moving. He said okay, but maybe I should be more careful. I said I am careful. That was the end of the conversation, or so I thought. Apparently David called my doctor's office, asked them if there were any concerns about my cognitive function or my physical ability to drive safely. My doctor, Dr. Richardson, good man, been seeing him for 20 years, told David that I was in good health for my age, that my last cognitive assessment 6 months ago showed no signs of dementia or decline, and that he had no medical reason to recommend I stop driving. David wasn't satisfied with that, so he started watching me. I didn't know it at the time, but he was building a case, collecting evidence, making notes. He came over one afternoon about a month after the grocery store incident, said he wanted to take me to lunch. We got in my car, I drove. We went to a diner about 10 minutes away, had sandwiches, drove back. Normal afternoon. Except when I got home, I found out later he'd been documenting the entire trip. Wrote down that I'd driven 5 miles under the speed limit on a 2-lane road. Wrote down that I'd taken what he considered to be an unnecessarily wide turn. Wrote down that I'd hesitated at a 4-way stop, waiting to make sure the other cars were actually stopping before I proceeded. He interpreted caution as incompetence. He interpreted defensive driving as confusion. He interpreted an 87-year-old man being careful as an 87-year-old man being unsafe. 2 weeks after that lunch, he showed up with his wife, Linda. They wanted to talk, they said. Serious conversation. I made coffee. We sat in the living room. David pulled out a folder, actual folder, with papers in it. He had the incident report from the grocery store. He had his notes from our lunch drive. He had statistics he'd printed from the internet about accident rates among elderly drivers. He had an article about age-related decline in reaction time. He'd built an entire presentation designed to prove that I shouldn't be driving anymore. I listened to the whole thing, didn't interrupt, let him make his case. And when he was done, I asked him a simple question. Have I ever caused an accident? He said no. Have I ever gotten a ticket? Not in the last 20 years, he admitted. Has Dr. Richardson said I'm unfit to drive? No. Then what exactly are we talking about here? He said we were talking about prevention, about being proactive, about not waiting until something bad happened. He said that just because I'd been lucky so far didn't mean my luck would hold. He said that statistically, drivers over 85 were at significantly higher risk of accidents. I said statistics are about populations, not individuals. I said I'm aware of my limitations and I compensate for them. I said I don't drive at night, I don't drive in bad weather, I don't drive long distances anymore. I said I'm doing exactly what a responsible elderly driver should do. Linda, who'd been quiet up to this point, said, "But Dad, what if you hurt someone? What if you don't see someone in time and there's an accident? Could you live with yourself?" And that's when I realized what this was really about. This wasn't about my safety. This wasn't even about public safety. This was about their anxiety, their fear that something might happen and they'd feel responsible, their need to control a situation that made them uncomfortable. I told them I appreciated their concern, but I wasn't ready to give up my license, that I'd continue to monitor my own abilities and would make that decision when the time was right, but the time wasn't right yet. David didn't like that answer. He said I was being stubborn. He said I was putting pride ahead of common sense. He said, and I'll never forget this, "Dad, you need to act your age." Act my age. What does that mean exactly? Act my age. Does it mean sit in my house all day waiting for someone else to take me places on their schedule? Does it mean give up the independence I've maintained for 71 years because my son has decided 87 is the magic number where you stop being competent? Does it mean accept that I'm no longer capable of making my own decisions about my own life? I told him I was acting my age. My age is 87, and I'm still capable, and I'm still driving. He left angry. Linda looked apologetic, but she didn't contradict him. That was 6 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I was about to leave for the grocery store. Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock, same as always. I walked out to my car with my reusable shopping bags and my list. David was sitting in his car in my driveway. I hadn't heard him pull up. He got out, asked if we could talk. I said I was heading out, but we could talk when I got back. He said it couldn't wait. I unlocked my car, put my bags in the passenger seat, pulled my keys out of my pocket. That's when David reached over and took them out of my hand. Just took them. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I can't let you drive anymore, Dad. I've talked to Linda. I've talked to Dr. Richardson again. I've consulted with an attorney. You're not safe behind the wheel, and I have a responsibility to protect you and protect others." I said, "Give me my keys." He said, "I can't do that." I said, "Those are my keys. That's my car. Give them back right now." He said, "I'm sorry, Dad. This is for your own good. For my own good. I'm 87 years old. I'm a grown man. I'm a veteran, an engineer, a father, a widower who's been taking care of himself for 14 years. And my son is standing in my driveway telling me what's for my own good. I told him he had no legal right to take my property. He said he'd consulted with an attorney, and while he couldn't force me to stop driving, he could prevent me from accessing a vehicle if he believed I was a danger to myself. He said if I insisted on driving, he'd report me to the DMV, request a driver evaluation, and possibly pursue a guardianship if necessary. Guardianship. He was threatening to have me declared incompetent, to take away my legal autonomy, because I wouldn't voluntarily surrender my car keys. I asked him if Dr. Richardson had actually said I was unfit to drive. He admitted that no, Dr. Richardson had said I was borderline, that it was a judgment call, that I could probably continue driving safely with limitations, but that it might be time to think about alternatives. Borderline. Might be time to think about. That's not a medical order to stop driving. That's a suggestion to start considering future options. But David had decided the decision was made, and he'd made it for me. I told him to get off my property. He said he was trying to help. I said if he wanted to help, he'd give me my keys back and let me live my life. He said he couldn't do that. He said he'd make arrangements for grocery delivery, that he or Linda would drive me to appointments, that they'd help me figure out transportation solutions. Transportation solutions? Like I'm a logistics problem to be solved. He left with my keys. I went back inside, called Walter, asked him to come pick me up and take me to the grocery store. He did. 92 years old and still driving, by the way. No one's taken his keys. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, my life has become a series of dependencies I never wanted and never needed. David set up grocery delivery. Someone else picks my food now. Someone else decides if the bananas are ripe enough or if the bread is fresh. I don't get to do that anymore. Linda drives me to my doctor's appointments, which means I have to schedule them around her availability, which means my health care is now contingent on whether my daughter-in-law has a free afternoon. I missed gin rummy last Thursday because I couldn't get there. Walter offered to pick me up, but I'm 87 years old, and I've reached the point where I'm being chauffeured around like a child, and I hate it. I hate every second of it. Yesterday, I had to ask David to drive me to the hardware store because my kitchen faucet was dripping and I needed a washer. He said he was busy, could it wait until the weekend? I said, I've been fixing my own faucets for 60 years. I don't need you to do it. I just need a ride to buy the part. He said he'd order it on Amazon and bring it over tomorrow. I don't want it ordered on Amazon. I want to go to the hardware store. I want to talk to Jerry behind the counter, who knows exactly which washer fits exactly which faucet. I want to walk the aisles and see what else I might need while I'm there. I want the independence of solving my own problems on my own timeline. But I don't get that anymore. Because my son decided I'm too old to be trusted. Here's what nobody tells you about aging. The physical decline, that's hard. The aches and pains and things that don't work the way they used to, that's frustrating. But the worst part, the absolutely crushing part, is when the people around you stop seeing you as competent. When they start making decisions for you instead of with you. When they start talking about you in the third person while you're in the room. When they start treating your preferences as symptoms and your independence as a problem. I'm not senile. I'm not confused. I'm not a danger to anyone. I'm an 87-year-old man who drives carefully, knows his limitations, and has been safely operating vehicles since before my son was born. But because I'm 87, because I once stopped in time to avoid a woman with a shopping cart, because my son is anxious about hypothetical scenarios, I've lost the freedom to move through the world on my own terms. And the hardest part is that David thinks he's helping. He genuinely believes he's being a good son. He thinks taking my keys is an act of love, of protection, of responsible care. He doesn't understand that he's taken my dignity. He doesn't understand that independence isn't just about convenience, it's about identity. It's about waking up in the morning and knowing you're still capable of managing your own life. It's about not having to ask permission to go to the grocery store. It's about being a person instead of a dependent. I've been thinking a lot about what acting my age means. David thinks it means accepting limitations, accepting that I'm old and therefore incapable, accepting that other people know better than I do what's good for me. But I've lived 87 years. I've driven for 71 of them. I've raised a child, buried a wife, built a career, maintained a home, contributed to my community. I've made thousands of decisions, some good, some bad, but all mine. I've lived a life of autonomy and competence. Acting my age means honoring that, honoring the wisdom and experience and capability that got me to 87, not pretending that the number itself has made me incompetent. If I'm unsafe, show me evidence, not statistics about other people my age, evidence about me, real evidence, a failed driving test, a medical diagnosis, an actual accident, something concrete that proves I'm a danger. But there isn't any evidence. There's just anxiety. David's anxiety about what might happen, his need to feel like he's preventing something, his inability to tolerate the uncertainty of having an 87-year-old father who still insists on living independently. So he took my keys. And in doing so, he took my autonomy, my dignity, my sense of myself as a capable person. I've been looking into my options. There are legal avenues. I could fight this. I could go to the DMV myself, request a driver evaluation, prove I'm competent. I could demand my keys back and threaten legal action if David doesn't return my property. But here's the thing. If I fight this, if I force the issue, David has made it clear he'll pursue guardianship. And even if I'd win, even if a court would never grant him guardianship over a competent adult, the process itself would be humiliating, expensive, damaging to what's left of our relationship. And that's the trap. That's the impossible position he's put me in. I can accept this loss of independence quietly, or I can fight it and risk losing even more. Those are my options. Walter came by yesterday, brought me some supplies from the hardware store, said he figured I could use them. We sat in my living room. Him still driving at 92, me grounded at 87. He said, "Your boy means well." I said, "I know he does. That's what makes it so hard." Walter said when he turned 90, his daughter started the same campaign, started leaving pamphlets about senior living communities on his kitchen table, started suggesting maybe it was time to think about downsizing, about getting help, about accepting that he couldn't do everything anymore. He told her, politely but firmly, that he'd raised her to be independent and capable, and he'd appreciate if she'd grant him the same respect, that he would ask for help when he needed it. But until then, he expected to be treated as the competent adult he'd been for 90 years. She backed off. Not happily, but she backed off. I asked him how he did it, how he set that boundary. He said, "I told her that loving someone doesn't mean controlling them, that being concerned doesn't give you the right to make their decisions, and that if the day comes when I'm truly unsafe, when I'm truly incapable, I trust her to tell me, and I trust myself to listen. But that day isn't here yet, and when it comes, I'll know it." I wish I'd said that to David, before it got to this point, before he decided he knew better than me, better than my doctor, better than my 71-year driving record. But I didn't. And now we're here, with my car sitting in my driveway, and my keys in my son's possession, and my independence gone. I think what hurts most is the betrayal of it. I raised David to be independent, to think critically, to make his own decisions. I supported every choice he made, even the ones I disagreed with, because he was an adult, and adults get to chart their own course. But now that I'm old, apparently those principles don't apply to me anymore. Now I'm the exception, the one person who doesn't get autonomy because my age makes me suspect. There's a photo on my mantle, David's high school graduation, 1983. I'm standing next to him in the parking lot, handing him the keys to the car I'd just bought him. A used Toyota, nothing fancy, but it was his freedom, his independence. I remember the look on his face when I put those keys in his hand. Pride, excitement, the thrill of autonomy, of being trusted, of being capable. I wonder if he remembers that moment, if he remembers what it felt like to receive keys instead of having them taken away, if he has any idea what it feels like to be on this side of the equation. I'm 87 years old. I've been driving since 1953. I've logged over 1 million miles without a serious accident. I've driven through snowstorms and rainstorms and across the country and back. I've driven my wife to the hospital when she was in labor. I've driven her to chemotherapy. I've driven myself to work for 38 years and never once needed anyone else to get me there. And now I sit in my house, looking at my car in the driveway, unable to use it because my son has decided he knows better. This is what happens when you get old. People stop seeing your lifetime of competence and start seeing only your age. They stop trusting your judgment and start trusting their fears. They stop treating you as an equal and start treating you as a liability. And they do it with love, with good intentions, thinking they're protecting you when really they're diminishing you. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if I'll ever drive again. I don't know if I'll fight this or accept it, or if there's even a difference anymore. What I know is this: I'm still here. I'm still capable. I'm still the same man who's been navigating this world successfully for 87 years. And I'm being told to act my age. Well, I am acting my age. My age is 87, and I'm still fighting for my right to live independently. My age is 87, and I refuse to be treated like a child who needs constant supervision. My age is 87, and I still deserve respect, autonomy, and the dignity of making my own decisions. If you still have your independence, protect it. Set boundaries with your children now, before they think they have the right to make your decisions. Make your wishes clear. Document your competence. Don't let anyone take your autonomy without a fight. And if you're the child, If you're the one looking at your aging parent and feeling anxious, feeling like you need to step in and take control, ask yourself something first. Ask yourself if you're responding to actual evidence of incapacity or just your own fear. Ask yourself if you're helping or controlling. Ask yourself how you'd feel if someone took your keys, your choices, your autonomy because they decided they knew better than you what you could handle. My son took my keys 3 weeks ago. He thinks he saved me from an accident that might have happened. What he actually did was take the last piece of independence I had left, and I don't know if I'll ever forgive him for it.